Hey, it's Brad Miller, and here with Jason Medford. And today, I want to talk a little bit about your soul. Now, I'm not
Ugh.
talking right now. I'm not,
You're gonna
exchanging
suck
things
my
for your
soul
soul,
out,
or
Brad.
gonna suck it. That's not. I'm not a succubus. I'm not. We're not talking about that direction. But the idea that I want to talk about today is the health specifically of your soul and kind of how your soul, mind, body, all those are kind of connected, um, because there is a connection between all of those.
Yeah. Well, I think it's one of those where, again, different people use different words, but a lot of people use the word soul as kind of a complete being, meaning your mind, your body, and your spirit, right? That all three of those things are kind of your soul, if you will. Some people, when they use the word soul, they're meaning more spirit. It would be more equivalent to light being, luminous bodies, things like that as well. Tanal versus Nawal, different things like
Mhm.
that. But yeah, a lot of people kind of use that to mean that. So that's what we wanted to talk a little bit about. Is kind of thinking about your soul or your overall being from a health perspective. So I know, Brad, you'd kind of listened to a podcast that kind of
Yeah.
gave you this idea a little bit over the weekend. So where do you want to go with it?
Yeah.
I mean, how are we
Well,
gonna?
I will first state that neither of us are medical professionals. And so nothing that we say today is meant to be medical advice, that you should consult a medical professional if you have any issues. And so there
And
you go.
and the lawyer made us say that. So there we
Of
go.
course. Right. That damn lawyer.
Damn
I
lawyers.
hate those lawyers. Um, but anyway, so ironically, now talking about lawyers, one of the things that I noticed a lot with lawyers, because I talk with them, because I follow a lot on LinkedIn and things like that, is the idea, or I guess the fact that we get so focused on helping and doing things, whether it running our practices or helping clients. It's all about kind of the doing, the doing. And we don't take the time to pause. We don't take the time to rest. And I think we all know how that can impact your mental health. If your mind gets kind of run down, you kind of can't concentrate, can't focus. I think we know or can see how it hurts your physical health, how it can impact you physically. If you're tired, you're worn down, you're more susceptible to sickness, from stress, and your immune system is weakened and things like that. But it also can impact you in a spiritual level as well. When you don't rest, when you're just always going and constantly and you're getting worn down.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because a lot of times people will use the word balance, right? So like
Mm.
work-life balance or things like that. And what's interesting is in this concept and thinking about health of your kind of whole being, it's not either or. It's not like a teeter-totter. It's balancing three different points, right? Mind, body, and spirit. And this has kind of come up on my mind. Brad kind of got the idea from a podcast you listen to. And I've been thinking more about it because of a program that I'm participating in with a friend of mine, and just thinking about my intentions for the next 90 days and where I want to focus. And anytime that one of these three gets out of balance, then something is not right. You're not in complete homeostasis, right? And especially for, I mean, my whole life I have always been a very active learner. I've always been curious. I've always been reading and learning. So I've spent a lot of time on my mind or my brain. And again, there's a difference between brain and mind, and we
We won't
might
get
get
into that
into that.
today, but
We won't
yeah.
get into that today, but because most of the time when people say mind, body, spirit, they're thinking brain, right? And so I spent a lot of time, got a lot of education to work my brain, if you will, and to make sure that it's always going. I'm always nourishing it. Okay. Uh, the last few years, especially, I've spent a lot of time nourishing my spirit and my spiritual side as well, right? But what I've been doing is there's some body things that I've neglected, right? And so I'm doing pretty good on two of them. The third one is kind of a little half-ass, right? Now, at other points in my life, like I said, always pretty much my brain, my mind has always been a top priority. I've usually done a very good job about that, right? And at different points in my life, it was my mind and my body were the two that were really chugging along, right? I mean, times when I was, in very good shape, I was running 3 to 5 miles a day. I was toned, muscular. May not have been eating as great, but my body felt good, right? I was able to do any of the things that I wanted to, kind of that way. And the body kind of gave way to a lot of the spiritual stuff the last few years, right? And even before that, the body kind of gave way a little bit because probably, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago, maybe 8 years, somewhere in that range. I was traveling a lot, about 40 weeks a year. I was internationally somewhere. I was eating 3 big meals a day that were buffet, right, in hotels. I was doing my exercise of walking from my hotel room to the elevator, down to the floor, to the training room, right? So that's how many steps I was probably walking most of the days, and I was eating 3 big meals a day. So guess what happened, right? I balloon up. I probably end up at a point where I was about trying to do math in my head here, but I was probably close to 60 pounds over where my ideal weight was. 60 to 70 pounds over what my ideal weight would be for my body, right? So honestly, when I go back and see pictures of myself now, I was fat, right? I wasn't stocky, I was fat. I mean, you could see it in my neck, you could see it in my cheeks, my belly. Oh my gosh, I got up to the point where I had to keep buying bigger and bigger and bigger clothes. I got up to like a 38 waist. And when I got to 38 waist and double XL in some things, I'm like, no more, right? That was kind of like the breaking point for me. And so I made some changes in how I was eating or how much I was eating. And I was going for a walk or a run every day. And I dropped, 50 to 60 pounds fairly quick, maybe 40 to 50 to begin with, right? And so that part of the body was working pretty good for a while, and the mind was still working, but I wasn't paying attention to the spirit. And, kind of got down to a weight that was much healthier than where I was, but not where I still should be, right? But I kind of gave up some of that or moved my attention from the body to the spirit the last 2 or 3 years, thinking, well, that's more important anyway. I need to be focusing on that. That's where I should be placing my attention. And I've kind of given up some of the stuff around the body. I don't exercise as much as I should. I'm not as active as I should be. And so that's why, this last week I've really kind of started to do it again with the intention of I love and connect with my body. Right. And so if I love my body, then I should be doing some things to actually help it. Right. I've already started eating better. I've been taking supplements for a while now, but now I've got to have my body get active a little bit more. Right. And but when I do that, I can't give up the mind and the spirit side either. Right. Because that's what I've done most of my life is I'm usually pretty good at 2 out of 3. And so one of those 3 always suffers, right? But I'm to the point in my life where I can't let one of them suffer. I have to really balance all 3. It's not about balancing 2, it's about balancing 3.
Yeah, it's like a 3-legged stool. If one of the legs is not par, you fall over. It's all wobbly, and if it's enough, it you fall over on your head. And that's, I think, the deal here is that if it's too, you can kind of maybe make it work if it's the third is kind of close, and but at some point, if it gets too much to the other sides, it's a 2-legged stool, and well, it doesn't work out for anybody.
Two-legged doesn't work out very well, right? But yeah, when you have the 3 points down, right? Because again, if we take that idea of the stool, right? So some of my not necessarily stools, but like end tables are three-legged, right? Because again, I've got some that are four-legged, some that are three-legged, but you need that third leg to provide the support. With just
Totally,
two,
yeah.
it doesn't work, right?
Hmm.
And so I remember, when I grew up on a farm and we would milk cows, and my dad actually had a little stool that he had built, but it was one-legged, right? So it was like a 2x6 or 2x8, little piece that was like that
Hmm.
with a 2x4 kind of nailed or screwed on it. So it was kind of like a little T, right? It looked like a
Hmm.
T that you could sit
Okay.
on. Now, if you tried to sit on that without having your feet on the ground, it ain't going to work, right? Because you just trying to go around on one point. The one point doesn't work. If you put your second leg down, you're a little bit more stable, but you're still not very stable until you put your third leg down. And so, even though that stool only had one leg,
Hmm.
your other two legs become the three, right? That then make it so it's a stable place to sit when we're milking the cows, right? And so I think that's an example of this too. If you're only focusing on one of these or two of these, you're going to be wobbly, and things
Hmm.
aren't going to be as good as if you actually are balancing all three of them. And you have to have
Right.
all three to really be balanced.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think with lawyers, with professionals, accountants, whatever, I think a lot of us do the same thing that you did. We focus a lot on our minds first and foremost. And I think sometimes, especially, maybe before you have a family and stuff, you think you focus on the physical stuff. Maybe you work out, you do, you do sports, or you go, play basketball or do things like that you're active when you're younger and you don't have a family and stuff like that. And then you get other responsibilities coming in, and then sometimes that leg gets kind of wobbly because you don't focus at that. And um, I think obviously people who are listening to us are working on that third leg, the spiritual leg. But for a lot of people too, they don't have that third leg, isn't there. And so it's, and not to judge anyone, you know, but that I think can contribute to some people being wobbly. They're not feeling kind of complete or kind of solid or stable in their lives, because they don't have all three legs down.
Well, and it's interesting too, because I think it's also a balancing of ourself versus others too, right? So there's a term
Mm-hmm.
out there, right? Like a dad body, right? A dad
Mm-hmm.
body. Well, what's a dad body? We're usually a little chubby in the center. Why? Because we've got other responsibilities. We're working a lot to provide for our family. So
Mm-hmm.
we maybe don't have time to go to the gym or exercise like we did before we had a family.
Mm-hmm.
As your kids get older, you've got more responsibilities. I mean, your daughter's in what, cheerleading and soccer and some other
Yep.
stuff, right? So your time often ends up going to supporting her, supporting your wife, supporting your profession, right? And
Yep.
so there's also kind of a balance of where we prioritize. Are we prioritizing more for other people, or are we prioritizing for ourselves, right? And there has to
Mm-hmm.
be a kind of a balance between that. But if everything that you're giving is to your clients or to your kids or to your spouse or to your family, extended family, and you're not taking any time for yourself, you're going to be wobbly, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you're spending all the time on yourself and nothing on anybody else, well, all those relationships are going to be pretty wobbly, and they probably won't last for very long, right? And so I
Yep.
think it's a mind body spirit balance, but it's also taking care of us and prioritizing our own mind, body, and spirit self-care with what we're also giving to other people.
Yeah.
Because if we don't take time for ourselves, then we're going to be wobbly, and we can't actually be there for those other people in our lives. Because if we've burned out, we're not
Mhm.
available to help anybody else.
Right. Yeah. For those of you who are listening to this, not on the watching on the podcast, this the dad bod Jason's talking about you're looking at it. So if you're not here, you can't actually see what he's talking about if you're just the podcast. So again, another reason why to check us out on YouTube.
Well,
But
and
no,
I'll tell you, man, I had like a 3 times dad bod. When I go back and look, I'm like, oh my God, I didn't realize that my belly was that big,
three dads
right?
worth.
Three
I
dad
have
bod worth.
actually seen some video of you from the past, so I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, there's video out there. If people want to, if you don't believe me,
yeah,
go back, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years, and you'll see me much, much bigger, right?
yeah. There was an
Um,
interview. I can't remember who it was with, Brian Tracy or somebody, an interview with you, and
yeah.
yeah, I definitely can see what you're talking about. And in the beginning, it's just because, like you said, we focus on other things. And this is one of the things that just gets put to the wayside. And professionals are really highly susceptible to this because we want to help others. Like that's why we went into what we did. We're a lawyer because we want to help others. We're an accountant, a CPA because we want to help others. We're a doctor or a pharmacist or an engineer, whatever, because we want to help other people. And so we kind of tend to put that part first, is thinking about others. And then if we've got a family, well, a lot of us try to put a lot of focus on that. We want to take care of our wife, our husband, our spouse, our significant others, our kids, whoever. And so now we've got these two spots that we're fully focusing on. And then we drop the third part, which is us, which is ourselves. We don't take the time for us. We don't take the time for our health, physical health, or the mental health breaks. We don't go and take time for our spiritual health, and our spiritual well-being, which is why I always am pounding on people to, take time out, take time away. If you're not getting out and enjoying nature, like that's impacting, if you're so focused on other things, and there's definitely some things put into some of these professions that kind of lead you to more of that and away from taking the time to yourself. But um, this is all, like I said, it's all connected. They're all parts and they're all issues.
Well, and when one is not functioning, the others don't function as well either.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think too, as we're talking about this, because, again, a lot of this is maybe of today is going to be more practical for people as
Mm-hmm.
well. But I think the other thing, whenever we use the word balance, right? Like I said, one misconception is it's usually either or, it's two things. No, it's usually three
Yeah.
things that you're balancing. It's not just two, right? So that's a misconception a lot of people have. The other one is balance doesn't mean equal amount of time,
Right.
right? So a lot of times people think, oh, well, I need to spend the same amount of time on this as I do on that. No, that's not even necessarily the case, right? But there's probably some rules of thumb, and it's going to vary from day to day, from week to week, right? Some days you'll be able to spend more time than you do others. But, again, between, trying to do some things for your mind, body, and spirit, you probably should be spending half an hour to an hour for yourself every day.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people, I know you might be saying, my gosh, how am I going to do that? How am I going to do an hour? Well,
Mm-hmm.
just look at how you spend your day. And I will bet, that a lot of people, there's places that you're spending more time that you don't need to spend time. How much time are you spending on social media? Social
Right.
media is great, right? Fine. It's a great entertainment. I mean, one of my friends, instead of watching TV, sometimes we'll actually just do that instead, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of watch the videos, are funny and whatever else for that as a form of entertainment. Fine, right? But are you spending a half an hour, 2 hours on there, like you might watching TV, or are you spending 6 hours during the day because you keep picking up your phone and you don't actually realize how much time you're spending, right? Are you watching a half an hour, maybe a movie in the evening, or are you spending 4 or 5 hours during the day watching TV, right? And they're all trade-offs. They're all trade-offs on, how much time you want to spend different places. But if you're not, I'm just going to make some general things that, again, are not necessarily true for everybody, but what I'm starting to do more is, things about the body, what we're choosing to eat, the supplements I'm taking, those are things that kind of like go throughout the day, right? But at least for now, I'm spending 15, 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes a day moving my body more, right? So you could say that that was my self time on my body side of it, right? From my spirit side, there are certain practices or rituals that I do each day. Some don't take very much time at all, a few seconds. Some might take a few minutes. Meditation or an audio that I'm listening to might take a half an hour, right? And so there's some combination of that I'm doing during the day to kind of, make up for that. And my mind, again, always learning different things. And, how do I balance that then, self, work, family? Well, at my stage in life, I don't, all my kids are adults. I'm not married currently. So a lot of the family things, I don't really have to or spend a lot of
Not
time
important
on.
to you right now.
They're not important to me. They're not in that season of my life right now. And so I have more time because of that, right? Work wise, I could work as long as I wanted to every single day. Hey, when you're self-employed, if you want to, every waking hour you can spend working.
Just about, yeah. If you're not
If you
careful,
want,
it happens.
if you want to, right? But I've set myself boundaries. Usually I don't like to start work until 9 o'clock my time. By 6 o'clock, I want to be done. Even if everything is not done, a lot of times I'm just done, and it's
Mhm.
going to have to wait, right? Now, some days I have to start earlier. Some days I might have a client deadline, and so I do have to work later. Some days I might only have to work an hour or two. Some days might only be a half an hour. That might be all I have to do during the day, right? And so I can balance my weekly schedule because I work for myself, right? If I was,
Mhm.
an 8 to 5 job, it's a little bit different. But that's kind of what I'm doing. But, everybody listening, you've got to decide what you're going to do. But you probably should be spending at least a few minutes every day on each of those 6 areas that we were talking about: mind, body, spirit, yourself, your work, and your family, right? What that looks like for you, I don't know. Only you can figure it out.
Mhm.
And it's not going to, I can promise you this: it's not going to be the same every single day. It's not going to be the same every single week or month or year. It's going to change. And so you have to be flexible
Mhm.
in it, but you have kind of some guidelines or rules of thumb on, what you're going to do. Like, hey, 15 minutes every day, I'm going to move my body at least 15 minutes a day. That's my you know commitment to myself. If I do 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour one day, fine,
Mhm.
but I've got to do a minimum of 15.
Yeah.
Things like that to kind of build it. So
Yeah, and that's one of the great things I love about, I've got an Apple Watch, but there's other things you can use as well. But it tracks my movement. And so I've set you can set a
a move goal.
a goal. Yeah, I set a goal every day. And so, I know I've got it set for however many calories or whatever it's doing. And when I hit that, it bings me and, shoots little fireworks and stuff. And
Congratulations, Brad.
exactly. And so, that's one way to kind of keep to gamify essentially some of that movement and things, which is often one of the hardest things for us to get in, especially as professionals, where a lot of our job is done at a desk, in front of a computer, on a phone. It's harder for us to get out. It's not like that our job requires us to be on our feet most of the day. We're not doing manual labor or having to move to walk or run or things like that. And so being more conscious about that and taking the time to be intentional to set aside time for movement is really important. But one thing you brought
Well,
up,
I was going to say
oh,
with the Apple Watch too, you can
mhm,
also do the breathe or the mindfulness too,
you
right? So
can.
not only can you do
Hmm.
the goal on that, but if you have something like that, it can remind you to stop and breathe, which again is good for your spirit, slowing down your
Yeah.
mind. And you can set timers. You can set calendar item reminders, right? I mean, if you're a tech person and you like the technology, use it to your advantage to maybe set alarms and remind yourself when you're going to do things. Or what I have to do a lot of times is actually block it on my calendar, because I'll forget.
Time block,
If I,
yeah.
if I don't have a task, or if I don't have a time block on my calendar, I'll forget. But it also forces me to get it done. Like when we get done here, I've got 2 presentations for a conference next month that I owe the client, and I got to get them done. So I'm going to do it all in 2 hours. I block my time, and the 2 hours is going to be it. That's all I'm going to spend on it. It's going to be as good as it is in 2 hours. I'm going to work my ass off for it, because I got other things I need to do after that. Right. And so anyway, sorry, I know I interrupted you because you were saying.
No, it's fine. No, and I actually turned off that mindfulness breathe thing on my phone, my watch, because it just got annoying. Every 5 minutes, it seemed like it was telling me to breathe. I'm like, dude, if I wasn't breathing, I'd be dead. So it's not telling me to breathe. Like,
it's more about mindful breathing and like taking a
I know,
pause for a
yeah,
minute. And you
but
can change the settings on it, so it only
you
hits you
can,
like
but it didn't
once
really
a
work for
day.
me. But anyway, that's just for those of you who are like, this is really hard for me. I don't use it either. So,
Yeah.
that but when it comes to setting up time, one of talking about how you don't have time to do things and to give time for yourself. One of my favorite times of the day is in the evenings. So, well, after between the time, so my wife and daughter usually go to bed about around the same time, because my wife has to get up early to go to work. And so they usually go to bed about the same time. And after that, I've got about a good hour before I go to bed. And so I love that time because I use it to listen to podcasts. I'll use it for maybe some spiritual things. When it was a little bit lighter out here in the summer and it stayed lighter, I would go out on the deck and I would just sit out there during that time, and quiet. Now I'll just do it here on the couch, or maybe here in my office, where it's quiet and things at that point of time. But I take that time, which otherwise I may be watching TV or on social media or whatever like that, and I try to use that time to make it productive for myself, for my spiritual health or my mental health. Taking that time for me. So you can, if you really look, you can find time in your day for things like that. Look at your lunchtime. Do you actually sit down and eat a lunch, take a whole hour or whatever to actually eat lunch and maybe move around a little bit, get away from your desk, or you sitting there and munching on something as you're working? Like those are there's times in there that you can find if you really look for it, and you really prioritize it. You can do that.
Well, I've kind of been that way too, because I've always been a morning person for some reason. And especially now, I'm like you, where I go to bed later than everybody, and I usually wake up earlier than everybody. And so, if I have friends or guests over, or whatever kind of thing, I usually have that alone time, like you said, for me, at least a half an hour or an hour or so at night, because I'm at the point right now where it goes back and forth, but I'm only sleeping 5 to 6 hours a night. That's just where I'm back to now. I used to be at 8 to 10 hours a night, and it just
We call that the
fluctuates.
college student sleep mode. But
Yeah,
yes.
it just fluctuates, and
Mhm.
there's different reasons why. Um,
The older we get, the less sleep our body requires as part of it.
yeah, well, and I'm just at that phase right now, right? So I know if I try to go to bed at 10 o'clock or 9 o'clock, I'm going to be awake at 3. I don't want to be awake at 3. So even if I'm
Nothing going
tired
on
at
then. Yeah.
even if I'm tired at 9, I'm not going to bed until 11 or 12, right? Because I know I'm going to be up at 5 or 6, like clockwork. Now today was different. I don't know what happened, but I slept in until 8 o'clock, and I
Wow.
was like, "Are you kidding me? Whoa!" Right? And that's why I don't like to start my day until 9 anyway, right? Because I don't set an alarm. But I use that time in the morning before anybody else was up, because it's my time.
Mhm.
I use that time in the evening after everybody else is in bed. That's my time, right? And
Yep.
I did that even when my kids were little, right? And when I had a family, it was the same way, right? Now, I always got up earlier. A lot of times I would go to bed the same time as my wife, but I always had that morning time. And so that morning time was when I would do those things for myself. because there was no obligation from anybody else. Nobody else was going, daddy, 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 or can you help me with this? Can you do this? And,
Mm-hmm.
all that kind of stuff. So
Yep.
as everybody thinks about it, you probably have some different blocks of time in the day when you could do these things. The other thing that's a good suggestion is think about when you're most productive during the day, right? Because some people are more late night people, some people are more early people, some people you take a nap during the day, right? So
Mm-hmm.
as you think about your circadian rhythm and what really works for you, what's the highest and best use of your time during certain parts of the day, right? Like you wouldn't want to
Mm-hmm.
watch TV when you're most productive, because
Right.
it's not an active kind of thing, right? So
Mm-hmm.
use entertainment as a time when you're just fried, vegged out. You just
Right.
need a time to kind of quit thinking or quit doing something. Use those times maybe for your entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. And for my coaching clients, I talk about, doing kind of like an energy audit of yourself. When do you feel your personal energy? Do you feel like, first thing in the morning that you're very active and alert and you can focus on really complex tasks? I know I can't. I'm worthless until about 10 o'clock in the morning, which is why we're not doing this podcast in the recording in the morning. Like if we were on up like it wouldn't work. Like this is an afternoon deal. But I know when I'm more focused, when I can more do creative tasks. I know when I'm more alert, when I'm better off having conversations with people, and so I schedule my day around it. And I being self-employed like you are, I understand that some people say, well, I can't do that. I've got to be in at 7:30 every morning and I have to be ready to go and get my work done. Like I don't have an option to do some of these things like you do, and or whatever. I understand that, but you can still figure out where in your day that you can do certain tasks that work better for you than others. And that just looks part of that just getting to know yourself and how you work best.
playing with it, testing it out, see what
Yep.
works, see what doesn't work. Because
Yep.
again, what we do may not be right for you. So
Right.
you've got to find out what works for you. It might work for you. I don't know. Right. But, so I think we give a lot of practical advice to this as
Mm-hmm.
well. Right. But we kind of started with, and again, the podcast is walking a spiritual path. So why the hell are we talking about this? Right. Because again, if you're thinking about kind of the three different areas, mind, body, spirit, you're thinking about, your self, work, family kind of obligations, right? Is if we're only doing good on one or two, and the third one is we're a little wobbly on it, then you're not really balanced. You're not really getting the full benefit of everything, right? So just like, again, if you're, and again, I could tell, I mean, when I always working on my mind,
Mm-hmm.
right, working on my spirit, but if my body hurts,
Mm-hmm.
if my body is clogged, if you will, for lack of a better term, so that I can't feel the energy in my body, then my mind and my spirit suffer
Mm-hmm.
because my body isn't where it needs to be, right? But when all three of those things are running on full cylinders, then your mind, your body, and your spirit together can create this synergy that's pretty amazing, right? When they're
Mm-hmm.
all actually working together and supporting each other. And, again, that's why we want to talk about it. Right. And if any of those particular areas, and again, we don't know what they are, and you don't have to tell us what they are, but if any one or more of those is kind of out of balance in your life, what can you start doing this week to commit, to make an intention, right, to start maybe doing things a little different? And we're not talking about going out and running a marathon next week, but what small and simple things can you do every single day to get you one step closer to where you want to be, right?
Yeah.
I would love to be back out on the trails running 5 miles a day. I actually loved it. In fact, when you when you run longer than that, you get to like 8 to 10 miles and you hit the runner's high. Man, that's like a drug. It's fucking amazing, right? But I know that that's not, may not even be my reality, because of my age and some of the other stuff that I'm doing. But doing something, even if it's only 5 minutes, is something. It's a commitment to myself. And that 5 minutes might become 6 minutes tomorrow, might become 10 minutes tomorrow, might become 15 or 30 minutes. And I might say, 30, that's good. That's enough. That's all I need. Right. But we've got to work ourselves up to it. And there's some days again where, I'm probably do a live on this, but I have my running shoes on because I moved them into my bedroom. So they're right next to my bed. So as I get dressed in the morning, as I get out of bed, the
Slip them
first
on
thing
real
I
quick.
do
Yep.
is put on my running shoes. Now, why do I do that? Because if you don't, then you end up forgetting about it. I force myself to keep my running shoes on until I go out for my run or my walk. Yesterday, they were on until 6 or 7 o'clock at night because I had a crazy day that I wasn't anticipating, but I still went out for 5 minutes, right? Last night, because I had that commitment to myself and my body that I was going to get out of the house and do at least the 5 minutes. And then I could take my shoes off. Right. So there's other little hacks and things like that you can do as well. But just a little bit of effort, a few seconds, a few minutes every single day makes a big difference over time.
A little goes a long way, I'd say. But yeah. And if you, kind of, again, like you said, tying this back into the whole kind of spiritual idea, if your body isn't on top of its game, you can't perform in your work as well. Like if you're tired, if your body, if you're sick, you're not able to do your best work. If you are just stressed out and your mind, you've been all these things going through your head, what's going on in your life, whatever, you can't focus on your work. You can't focus on other things going on. Same thing happens with your spiritual stuff. If your body isn't able, if your body's hurting, if you're not treating it well, if you're not giving yourself mental breaks, if you're filled with stress, you're not going to be able to do some of the things that we've talked about in other episodes. You're not going to be able to hear the different signs that are coming to you. You're not going to be able to focus. You're not going to be able to pay attention to them. You're not going to have the energy to take the actions you need to, or the clarity to say, hey, I'm hearing something over there. I need to be paying attention to this, because you're going to be distracted by other things going on. And so, yes, we want you to be healthy, physically, mentally, all that kind of stuff, just because it's good for you as a person. But, on your spiritual journey, that's also, if you want to be able to move forward and do some of these things and be open, you have to be, healthy in these other aspects too, because everything is connected. It's not just you can't just ignore your body and say, well, screw you, body. I don't need you. I'm just all spiritual. No, we have a human body that we're living in. We have this brain sitting here on top of our neck, that we have to deal with, and all these things tied in. And if those aren't working, then the spiritual stuff isn't going to work either.
Yep. Which is why we chose to talk about it today, right? Because it is all connected, and the more balanced you can be, the more synergistic.
That's one of those businessy made up words. I hate that word.
Synergistic. You hate
I know
that
I
word?
hate that word. I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's synergistic on the blah 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 blah. But
Exactly.
again, the whole idea is that when these three things are working together, well, it is additive. Get away from using that word you don't like. On right, that the three parts end up making up more than the three parts individually can do by themselves. And it is an important thing. So again, this week, think about mind, body, spirit, maybe self, work, and family as well if you want to, and how well are you balancing each of those areas, and what little things can you do this week to help you start getting yourself back into balance.
Yep. It's all about balance.
All about balance. So go be balanced,
Be the
and we'll see
three-legged
you.
stool.
Be a
Yep.
three-legged stool, and we'll see you on our next episode. Have a great week, everybody.
See you guys. Talk to you
Yeah.
then.